I wore this shirt for you though.
Oh yeah. You know what? I had my purple one. I almost wore that. I had it in the closet, and I go, no, I'm going to be more professional. I'm going to wear my blue Oxford.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was going through the golf shirts this morning as I went and played, and I was like, "Oh, hey, last time I bought that shirt the day I played with Kent." So
yeah. Oh
I
yeah. That
remembered.
was fun. That was fun. You're a great dude, man. I was excited to do this. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, no, it'll this will be awesome. Thanks for agreeing to do it as well. So we'll cut right into this, man. So I
Okay.
mean, I know you may know the purpose of this. I've talked to you about it in the past. Podcast, the purpose is just to tell the story of death care through the lens of all the legends who have built this industry into what we all are benefiting from now. Um, and it's sort of a selfish thing. Purpose behind it for me anyway is I want everyone that works at Tukio's to know who people are and to know their story and everything. But obviously, it benefits everyone in the industry to be able to get to know everybody's backstories and what they're up to. But so I sent you some questions to get your history. But before we do that, I wanted to start with the random one, which is if you were to have dinner with three people, dead or alive, who would they be and why?
Oh,
Uh,
awesome question. I loved it. Yeah, well, it did probably take me long to think of it. The three are all deceased. Imagine that. But it is Saint Joseph, the foster father of our Lord Jesus. And that's simply I get up every day and pray to love my wife like he loved Mary, with strength, holiness, and calmness. And the calmness thing is probably the hardest for me because I am not a calm person. But it's I wanna be a husband like that, right? So that's why he's the first one. The second one is Saint Paul, because I think he had the courage to change his life and to live with a purpose that he was willing to die for, and I want to live like that. So I want to do that. And the last one is G.K. Chesterton, and he's my absolute favorite author. I have to read every page he writes about 6 times to understand it because he's way smarter than I am. But he's nicknamed the Apostle of Common Sense or the Laughing Prophet, and he kind of takes a very intellectual view of things, but at a lighthearted stance. And he really fights against some of this progressiveness. It started in 1925 when H.G. Wells wrote a book basically saying history, we're just part of history, and we really don't have any control over it. And he didn't like that, right? He thought we had more than that. And so he wrote a book called The Everlasting Man, which really countered that, and said that we do have a say in history, and we don't want to get caught up in all this modernism, and just enjoy each other as humans, right? And use common sense and treat each other well. And he's a 6'4", 300-pound Englishman that just would have been a ball to have dinner with, because he was very down to earth and very calm. And although he was so intellectual, he didn't want to be that way. He wanted to be very down to earth. So those are the three that I would love to have had dinner with.
how did you get introduced to G.K. Chesterton? Like what kind of?
It I came across him reading, and I found myself really enjoying. He's very paradoxical, very light, very witty. Once you understand what he's trying to say, it's amazing. You're like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And I'm trying to think exactly the very first time I read him, but I just found myself gravitating to him, because I guess as you'll hear, kind of the theme, I always want to try to do the right thing, and I think life's supposed to be hard, and so I pray for the courage and wisdom and strength to handle a tough life, not an easy one. I don't want to be happy. I want to be joyful, right? There's a big difference. So I like hard things. I like challenges. So when I read that and didn't quite understand it, and then I dug into it, and then I found myself just locked into him. And there's a gentleman by the name of Dale Alquist who's not deceased, and Dale has taken upon himself to really be the living expert on G.K. Chesterton, and so he's created schools using his philosophy. It's just he has a Chesterton conference every year. He has a publication he puts out, every year or every month actually that I read. But I just find it hard to understand, but yet so enlightening when I do that. I think that's probably why I gravitated to it.
Oh, that's way cool. Um, have you read any? Is it Ryan Holiday? Have you read any of his stuff, like "The Obstacle Is the Way"?
No, I have not. I have not. Ryan Holiday. I'm gonna write that
I,
down. That
I think that book, "The Obstacle Is the Way," you would really like because it's that whole he's kind of a student of Marcus Aurelius,
okay.
Stoicism
Yes.
kind of stuff.
Yes.
Um,
Absolutely.
Great books, but yeah, it just made me think of him when you're talking about just yeah, you want a hard life and you want to be able to deal with it. And that whole the idea of obstacles the way is like if there's something on two paths and that one has a big obstacle in the way, that's the choice. That's the way you go.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I do love that. Kind of a glutton for punishment. I take a cold shower every morning. I fast for 16 hours every day. I'm probably, and I'll get in a little bit more too about, some of the questions you asked, which I loved, by the way, absolutely loved. I am known amongst my social peers as a weirdo geek nerd because I get so bored, Curtis, with typical surface conversation. That's why I think I love being a sales rep because I wanted to go from, hi, I'm Ken to, what do you think about, at night when you're laid in bed and you're all stressed out, because I don't want to, yeah, I love your carpet. I love your landscaping. I love what you did to the place. That drives me nuts. I want to find out what makes people tick, what's inside them. And some people aren't comfortable with that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're really not, especially with this guy they just met that's trying to sell them something. So
Yeah.
I'm serious. I love that. In fact, my friends now are like, oh my gosh, don't ask those deep questions. We don't want to talk about all that stuff. So anyway, that's why I
Have you
love it.
have you ever met Jay Dietz from Verton?
I have met Jay, but I don't know him. I've not spent much time with him.
Yeah, he's
But
that kind of guy too. Just reminds me because I remember I'd heard a lot about him because he'd met a few of our Tukios folks, and I ran into him at NFDA a few years ago. It was like the first time he and I'd had a real conversation. I don't think we were talking for more than like 90 seconds before he was like, "Are you present when you're at home with your children?" I'm like, "Whoa!" Like I
I
was
know.
like, "Dude,
Oh
you're
yeah,
freaking me out." Like
I
I
know.
could put my phone down more. All of a sudden, I felt like really guilty.
Oh yeah, no. See. I don't know. That's even kind of gives me the shakes, man, because I wouldn't go there. But I mean, eventually, I'd love to get there. So I got to meet this guy. I
Yeah,
do. I
he's
got to meet
awesome.
Jay.
He's
I got to
awesome.
meet Jay.
Some of the deepest conversations you could have. He's great.
Oh
You guys would be good
no,
friends, I'm sure.
I'm friends with Donnie Kiffmeyer, who used to work with Burton, so I'm sure Donnie knows him as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, cool.
Well, let's dive into your story, like from the
Okay.
beginning. Like, where you from? Where'd you grow up? School, hobbies, family, all that stuff.
Yeah. So
I'm going to try not to talk much. I'm going to let you go.
no, that's okay. Again, I have this insecurity that I have to be interesting, I have to be fun, I have to be enlightening, right? When I was putting this all together, it's like I was born in Berea, Ohio, which is a suburb of Cleveland, but grew up in Fairfield, Ohio, which is a suburb of Cincinnati. My dad was in social work, my mom was a teacher. Very human service environment. In fact, in college, when I heard people were business majors, no one ever told me you had to be kind of a not you're not crooked, but no one, my parents never told me that, but I don't know why I had this feeling that you had to kind of tiptoe the sidelines to be a good business person, right? Which I found out obviously you do not. But it was really interesting. So I had no interest in business. I got a bachelor arts degree in psychology and sociology from Wittenberg University in Springfield, Ohio. I went to grad school at Miami, Ohio, and I wanted to be a school psychologist. And I wanted to get my MED degree, which is kind of a 3-year degree in between a master's and a PhD. One of my professors, Dr. Brown, had 2 PhDs, one in educational psychology and one in exercise science. And I was a college athlete. I mean, I was a jock. I played football, dabbled in wrestling and baseball at the college level. I exercised regularly since I was 14. So I found myself gravitating more to the, corporate fitness or maybe even, sports psychology versus a school psychologist. And so I switched over into that program at Miami University in Oxford and ended up getting my master's degree in exercise science. And that's how I got into death care. Because it's weird. I graduated from
Naturally.
Miami in Oxford and I saw this posting for this fitness specialist at Hillenbrand Industries in Batesville, Indiana. I had
Wow.
no clue who Hillenbrand Industries was. I didn't know what they did. I didn't know anything about them. I went over and interviewed and got the job, and so my first job out of grad school was the exercise fitness specialist at Hillenbrand Industries in Batesville, Indiana, parent company of Batesville Casket and Forthat Group. Well, my job was to assess grade level 4 and 5. This is for the big execs. It was a perk for the execs at Hillenbrand. And so my job was to assess their fitness level and then kind of put together an exercise regimen, based on their goals and what they wanted to achieve. So I had a ball. I got to know people. I think life's hard enough, Curtis, as it is. I don't like trying to play poker with people and trying to figure out what they're thinking and what they're saying. I like being transparent, honest, and real. And so as the push-up guy, I wasn't trying to put on any airs, right, with all these big executives. And so I got to know them at a very ground level, which was very cool. And so, and what I also realized is like, man, I think I could do what a lot of these guys do, right? Because I was getting paid 19 grand a year, and I tell people I was getting paid 19 grand a year to fold their jocks and tell them how many push-ups to do, right? And I thought, man, I got more than this, right? I got more than this. So, and actually, I liken it. It's kind of a stretch, but I liken it to Michael Jordan's high school basketball coach that cut him, right? That created in him this desire, just unquenchable desire. And so I thought, man, I'm going to show all these, the few that were maybe a little degrading or condescending or maybe not as respectful as I would have hoped they would have been, right, as a human being. But so I went. They had an MBA program they started with Ball State out of Muncie, Indiana, and it was at the corporate office in the evening. And you'd go over there and sit around this big conference table, and they had this big red phone in the middle, and the professor was on a TV at the end of the table. And you watched his class, and if you wanted to ask a question, they had like 8 or 9 satellites. You picked up the red phone, and it beeped into the classroom, and you could ask a question, right? So I started that, and I was the push-up guy amongst all these other big executives, that were going back for their MBA, and it was a ball. I loved it. I loved it. Most of these folks I knew from being at the fitness center. So, I started back on my MBA, and then I started, the word started getting out a little bit with all, when people come over. And I got to tell a story though, because I feel kind of bad about it, but it's kind of fun in the sense there was one exec that'll remain nameless, and I won't even tell you what company he works for, but I could tell he was very condescending, and I take that as a challenge. I don't get mad. I don't respond in kind. I kind of internalize it, and I figure out, okay, yeah, how do I want to respond to this that I'm not ashamed of myself? So anyway, he was a big runner, and one day he goes, "Hey, you want to go for a run?" And I go, "Sure." So we start running. I go, "How far do you want to run?" He goes, "Well, let's go 5." And after about 3 miles, I go, "Hey, let's go 10." And I picked up the pace and picked up the pace, and we were conversational, right? So, but I wanted to pick up to the pace where he couldn't talk anymore. So I picked up the pace, picked up the pace, picked up the pace. And finally, I'll pick a name. I'll say Joe. That wasn't his name. I go, "Hey, Joe." I go, "Do you mind if I continue? Because I want to really get a good workout." I was kind of really
Oh
rude,
man.
right? Oh, yeah, yeah. And so I took off. I ran the 10 miles, got back, showered, was sitting at my desk at the facility before he even got back. And when he got back, I kind of looked at him, and it just this unwritten message, like, "Don't treat me like this, dude," and it worked. It worked because he goes, "Man, I had no idea you were such in good shape." I go, "I get paid to work out 3 times a day. What do you think?" So anyway, but it
Was
was
that
funny.
common to work out with them?
Oh, for me it was because me,
Yeah.
I love people, I love relationships, and so yeah, I'd get there in the morning, work out with the morning group, work out sometimes with the afternoon group, and then work out again in the evening, when I was done or whatever. So it was just, I really really loved it, but I wanted to challenge myself more, so I started back on my MBA. Then Forethought, right, was the youngest company. I interviewed with all the different companies. They had Medco locks, which were the locks in Fort Knox and all the high security. They had Hillrom Hospital beds, right, which they owned, oh my gosh, like a very large percent of the market at that time. Batesville Casket and the Forethought Group. And at one time they owned American Tourister, but they had sold that kind of luggage company right as I started. So I interviewed and I landed with Forethought as a regional sales coordinator. And I like to say it was a glorified administrative assistant between the field reps and the regional manager, right? And so, I gave them all this work to do, that the regional helped. And so I really enjoyed it, but I realized, again, this wasn't where I wanted to be very long. So I wanted to be in a sales leadership position, but I hated selling, hated it. I couldn't sell candy bars when I was in Little League. I mean, I hated asking people to buy stuff. It made me, I don't know if it was an insecurity or just lack of confidence or whatever, but I go, I can't be a good leader until I have the credibility of being out there. So I, bit the bullet and took a territory in Northwest Ohio. Long story short, in my second year, I was the top rep out of 100 reps in a Fortune 500 company. And,
Wow.
and it wasn't because I had these gifts of sales. It was because my parents taught me how to treat people with dignity and respect, right? But they also taught me no one was better than me, and I was not better than anybody else. So that gave me the courage to kind of ask some of the questions I should ask. And then my mom taught me that don't you ever give up, right? So I was like the little kid on the playground that was swinging at you, and you just had your hand on his forehead. He wasn't hitting you, but he kept trying anyway, So it was, I loved it. So, and I loved, the opportunity, but about 4 or 5 years in, Hillenbrand and Forethought realized the margins in preneed, right? We were writing insurance on old people, right? And the margins on hospital beds was like this. The margins on caskets were like this. The margins on preneed were like this, right? And so they started to make product changes, right? And so I thought, man, I'm going to finish up my MBA and go in and fix this. Is the way I thought, right? So I finished up my MBA at the University of Toledo up in Northwest Ohio, then came back in and, in marketing and sales and product development. And then my last gig was I headed up model agency, which was really, really cool. We tried to create the McDonald's of pre-need, right? To create these agencies so that we could drop them in all over the country, like a franchise concept.
Hmm.
And when I was overzealous, young and dumb and probably bit off more than I could chew, it was kind of the number one project for the company. And I said I could give them 5 at $2 million each. I barely had luck getting one at about 500,000. And, truth be told, 2 of the people I hired to run them passed away, which was, not anything I could do about that. But to find somebody that was good at recruiting funeral homes, good at recruiting agents, and doing they're separate talents. They're kind of different talents. And to find somebody that could to do all of it was interesting. So anyway, that's right up until the point that I was relieved of my duties. I was part of a 23% cost reduction at Forethought, and my feelings were crushed, man, because I loved it. But again, being the kind of person, thick skin, I got over it and sat out. And then a buddy of mine, who's amazing. He's my mentor. He's a president of a very, very, very large corporation here in the United States, but he was my mentor. And he wanted to buy a company, and so for the next year, he said, "I've never trusted anybody to run it." So I'm not an entrepreneur. I don't have the guts you have, or Thog Martin, or any of these guys that start their own business. Right? I admire it. I'm a corporate slug, right? And I have all this passion in my heart, and I'm going to finish this with telling you what I'd love to see what would I like to see happen in the space. But so I did that for a year, and then that's when I went with Homesteaders. I got called by a recruiter, that David Thomas was looking for a regional director, and I thought it was David Thomas for Wendy's, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't David Thomas for Wendy's. So I'm like, so anyway, it was Homesteaders, and a couple of my buddies were there. Jim Ward and Tom Coombs were already there, and they go, "Oh man, you got to come here. This place is great," And so I started there as a regional sales, or as a regional manager, and managing a team, and loved it. Because I love leadership. I love leadership whether you're kicking me or hugging me, because I really take serious, the opportunity to show people how much you care and to try to help them do things they don't even know they can do themselves. So it was fun for me, and I did that for I did 14 years with Forethought. I was 18 years with Homesteaders, and then again the recruiter called, and I didn't want to leave. I'm not a risk taker. I am not at all a risk taker, but I got called, and she was really, really good. And that was with Great Western. Right. And I kind of figured it out, and And I've since told the two folks that I reported to above me at Homesteaders, I go, you guys weren't going anywhere, and I thought I had more to offer, right? So, I started these conversations. I talked to my wife, and I talked to a buddy of mine that said, you ought to call them back, because I never called recruiters back ever, and I called her back, and she was really good. And long story short, it was a great opportunity for me to kind of be head coach rather than offensive line coach or regional coach or whatever. So I did that for almost 4 years, and some things changed there. Great people. I miss those guys. American Enterprise Group, which is now Wellaby, right? It's not Great Western anymore. It's Wellaby. I miss my team. I miss the folks I worked with. And the fun part on my exit, where I thought I was doing my annual review, but it was actually when HR is the first person on a Zoom call, you probably should get a little upset, right? But I didn't. I refused to. I refused to, because I can't control anybody but Kenn Peterson, right? And regardless if it's good or bad, I always want to feel like I'm being who I want to be, right? And that's a respectful, professional. I've got this saying. It's I call AE and we, and it's attitude, energy, and work ethic. I'm the only one that can control that, and so I wanted to bring it. So it was, I tell people they were so kind and gracious, and they treated me great even in that environment. And I felt like I was consoling more them than they were me, right? And I'm the one that was being relieved of my duties. But again, I've never burned a bridge. I've never held a grudge. I understand margins on pre-need are teeny tiny. I mean, teeny tiny, right? And and I get it. And so it was an economic. In fact, I asked my boss or coach, I go, one question before I go, and he's looking at me like, uh-oh, what's this question going to be, right? And I just go, was it anything I did or didn't do that caused this? And they said, absolutely not. It's an economic decision, and I get it, right? It is what it is. So, and they're doing great, and I wish them all the luck in the world, right? No hard feelings at all. So, but then I have some friends in the space, right? So I called a couple of my friends, and I'm usually not this pokery because I just share everything, but I'm trying to be respectful to everybody. But and made a couple phone calls, and they said, "Don't you do anything? Don't you do anything? I'm gonna call." So that's kind of how the transition happened. And then, I was talking to Canute at NGL, and then Canute ended up, we had this great couple conversations, and then I got ghosted, and I'm thinking, oh man, what did I say? Did I say something wrong? Well, anyway, he was looking at another opportunity. So that kind of evolved. And long story short, that happened in January, and then in June I started with NGL, and it's been a little over a year, and I'm loving it. But it's so weird for me because I'm not coaching anybody but myself. It's probably harder coaching myself than it is a team of 10, right? But it's just like, okay, I want to make sure I'm adding value, because I have this insecurity that you're only worth the value you add, and I always want to feel like I'm bringing it, right? I always want to feel like I'm adding value. I never take it for granted. I don't want to ever feel like I'm freeloading or not doing anything. So, I have a non-compete, and I'm respecting my non-compete. Everybody's been wonderful and gracious, and that goes through Feb 3 of next year. The gloves come off. Oh, did I say that? I better take that back. So, but anyway, so it's and again, it's been wonderful. It's been great. So I've been with 4 pre-need companies, right? I don't think anybody will ever do that again in the space, right? But the learning has been phenomenal. And if I had to go back and do it over again, I wouldn't change a thing. I really wouldn't. So,
yeah. Is there anyone from when you, like back in the forethought days, or even part of that 23% like reduction of force or whatever? Was there anyone back then that like you made friends with there that you just keep crossing paths with, or that you're working with now still, or anything like that? Is there anybody like a bunch of them?
Absolutely. I used to be the one that teased people, same face, different booth, right, at these conventions. And now I'm one of them. I'm like the biggest violator, I think, of any of them now, right? And I used to be the one that was teased people. So, oh my gosh, yes. I go to these state conventions and national conventions, and it literally is like a family reunion. Because again, I've never burned a bridge. I've never held a grudge. I go into all the booths. In fact, I told Schaefer at the last NFDA, or maybe it was 2 ago in Vegas. I was like, I go, Steve, I get confused at all these conventions. I don't know what booth to go to anymore. So he laughed. You know, he laughed. He's so cool. He just goes, just don't come to ours. And I start laughing, you know, but,
Yeah.
you know, because, you know, some of the, you know, they're the only company I really kind of left on my own. All the other ones I was uninvited, so to speak. But, you
Yeah.
know, so, but again, it is what it is. And I have this motto, Curtis, and it's like one of the questions I thought was really cool is what have I done in funeral service? And again,
Mm.
wonderful question. But again, I told you I've worked for in 37 years. I worked for 4 different pre-need companies. And when I look at their annual volume now, it's over $2 billion a year that I was part of those companies. I mean, like Forethought went from 30 million to over 600 million during my tenure. And as my daughter says, yeah, Dad, like you had a lot to do with that. I go, I had something to do with it a little bit, right? A little bit, but you know, and then Homesteaders goes from 150 to over 500, right? You know, and so you're part of these rides, which are really, really cool. But I have this motto, you know, that kind of oversees everything is I want to make the death care space a better place. I mean, I just
Yeah.
do. Every conversation, every convention, every interaction with my boss, my peers, customers, I do. I want to. So I think, you know, working for 4 different companies, you know, 2 billion a year in annual pre-need, I've developed a fearlessness and this growth mindset that I can ask any question. I've got this. I love when I go in and meet somebody because I used to travel with these reps, right? And the biggest concern I had was upsetting a customer. I didn't want to be a notepad dropper. I didn't want to be just a credit card that bought dinner, right? I didn't want to be that. I wanted to go in and add value. So I would ask them, you know, I said, do you mind if I'm honest with you, or do you want me to tell you what you want to hear? And people look at you when you ask that question. They look at you like, no, I don't want you to tell me what I want to hear. I want you to ask me a question, right? So I got permission to ask a question. So, you know, unless they hit it real well, I don't think I upset anybody too bad. But I would love to ask questions, you know, like, you know, what's your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? What keeps you awake at night? You know, who drives you crazy on your staff and why? You know, and how would you fix it? You know, but the relationships I've developed and, you know, I cherish. I'm serving as a trustee on the board for Cincinnati College of Mortuary Science, and absolutely love it
Cool.
because I'm probably the dumbest guy in the group because most of them are funeral people, and I love learning. I'm a certified celebrant, and I've never done a funeral, but I've done a wedding, and I'm doing a second wedding, and I use my certified celebrant process to officiate weddings. People
No way.
crack
Where
up.
did you do your training?
Um,
With Glenda?
yes, in the Cincinnati College of Mortuary Science, they
Oh,
brought
you did it
Glenda
there.
and Matthew in,
Yeah.
and they did it, and so it was wonderful. I loved it. It was wonderful, and so yeah, I mean, again, I try to, you know, leave things better than I found it in every situation and every conversation, and the question when you look at accomplishments, I try to be really humble, you know, but it's as I go to as a husband, my 33 years married to my wife Susan, okay, and as a father, my 3 kind, loving, smart, fun, and amazing children. My favorite thing on the planet is to hang out with them. Absolutely, my favorite thing on the planet. And as myself, I haven't done what I think I'm going to be proud of. I haven't done it yet. All right, I'm in the process. I've been journaling for probably 25 years.
Wow.
Um, I am going to write a faith-based leadership book that in my mind I've written and rewritten. And this goes out to LeMasters and Thogmartin. Yes, I'm going to write the book, so get off my back and quit bugging me about it, right? They bug me every time I see them. How's that book coming? With this really Cheshire cat smile on their face. I said, I haven't started yet. Shut up, right? So I am going to write it. It's going to be more to come. But I think, honestly, I think that will be what I'm most proud of. And you know, again, that's coming. But
How old are your
um,
kids?
Noah is 27, Matt is 25, and Megan is 23, right? Yes. So
Oh, cool.
hopefully I got those right. Yeah. No, they're 2 years apart. Um, just very different, but I just, being a father was probably the biggest challenge. And there's things looking back on it that I did really well, and there's things I probably could have done a lot better. But my advice to you who have young children, and it was given to me. And I brought my oldest home, Noah. He's 1 day old. He's on my chest, laying on the floor. My parents are there. And my mom goes, before you know it, he'll be in college. And I'm thinking, Mom, he's 1 day old. That is the most ridiculous thing. But she was 100% right. Absolutely 100% right. It flies by. And it's like a funeral director that's so busy working in the business, he doesn't work on the business. And it happens as a father too. You're so busy trying to, be the breadwinner, pay the bills, be a great husband, be a great dad, to step back and look at it and not get driven crazy by all of it. That's my advice. Step back at times, find a way, find a time to step back and think, okay, what am I doing good as a dad? And what's some things maybe I could do better, right? And
Yeah.
it's just my advice to young
Does anything
fathers.
jump out to you? You're like, yeah, that was a good move. Like as a dad, like any advice where it's like you did this and you're really proud you did that.
I think I was very transparent. In fact, it's funny. My wife will see this, and I'll get grief about it. But it's like I was very transparent with the kids. I tried never to say because I said so. I tried never to say that, right? And I'm explaining my little kids why I'm asking them to do something. And my wife's like shaking her head, like they are 3 years old. Why are you explaining to them why you're asking them to do that, or why you're asking them not to do that? I go because, right? I go eventually, and we were blessed. I think they take after their mother. Her dad was a chemist, and she's way smarter than I am. But they're all straight A students. They were all amazing, great learners, very productive members of society, and just awesome people. Awesome
Yeah,
people.
that's
I got a
awesome.
million stories, man. And we could talk. Honest to goodness, I did a 5 hour Con Ed at OFDA this year, and I was worried I wasn't going to have enough to talk about. I could have done a 10 hour Con Ed. I mean,
Jeez.
I, I just love to learn. I love to learn. I love to tell stories. I love to hear stories. I love to hear stories. But anyway, the next question was. I hope the answer is okay. But the question was, what was your biggest challenge you had to overcome?
Yeah.
And the answer came like that, but it's a weird answer. But I said no. I'm going with it. The biggest challenge for me to overcome is my selfishness. That's the biggest challenge in my life that I've had to overcome, and I'm still working on it at 61 years old, right? And service to others, I think, is incredible, right? That's what funeral homes do. That's what they put everybody else's life ahead of theirs. That's why it's such a challenge, right? It's hard to have a life, when you're on 24/7, 7 days a week, right? So it's my selfishness, and I'll tell you why. Why? It was the morning of September 14th, 2011. I was in Reading, Pennsylvania at a Homesteaders Con Ed session, right? And we had about 30 funeral directors, that would come to like a 2 day class, 6 hours a day, get 12 hours. And then we do it again the next hours to help them get their 24 hours, whatever, that they needed for insurance for Con Ed. I had my cell phone on 24/7 when I'm out of town. Somehow I missed a call. And I picked up this call. It's early in the morning. It was a Tuesday morning. I'm in my hotel room, and it's a message from a friend of ours that carpools with my wife, with the kids. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. She's calling me. So I pick it up and I listen to it. And it's that fake calm voice. We've all heard it where someone's trying to be calm, but they're not, right? So so I heard this fake calm voice. It says, Susan's okay. She's had a challenge. They're taking her to the hospital. You need to get home as soon as you can, but everything is going to be okay. And Curtis, I literally dropped to my knees with the phone in my hand and said, God, don't take her yet. Don't take her yet. I don't know why I knew it was something real serious, but I said, don't take her yet. Well, long story short, Susan had a vertebral artery dissection. That night she had a headache when she was with the kids, and the room spun and she had no idea what it was. And the next morning she got out of the shower, blew her nose, and two clots lodged. And what a vertebral artery dissection is when the inner wall of the artery falls in the artery and blocks the blood flow. And she had no idea what it was, but when she blew her nose, it released those two clots. One blocked blood flow to her cerebellum, so half her cerebellum's gone, and the other one went to her brainstem and blocked the area of her brainstem. So she has a lesion on her brainstem. So she is absolutely amazing. 23 days in the hospital. I was home by 2 o'clock that afternoon. And again, I was pathetic. I'm pathetically optimistic. And I thought, oh, we'll get over that. You know, that was in 2011, 13 years ago, right? She experiences trigeminal neuralgia pain every day because of that lesion on her brainstem. But if you look at her, she's, you know, looks amazing. But it was her challenge. But to watch your best friend suffer, she has these moments where it's like electrical cord has a faulty electrical circuit, but it hits that lesion on her brainstem. And if you look up trigeminal neuralgia pain, it's probably the worst pain on the planet. And she'll get zapped in the corner of her eye, the corner of her nose, the corner of her mouth. It's excruciating. And she'll just grab her face. And sometimes it lasts 2 seconds. Sometimes it lasts 10 seconds. But I want to cry, puke, or leave the room. It's horrible to watch. So it literally is my biggest challenge. You know, and God willing, we'll overcome it someday, but she's overcoming it. She's amazing. She just acts like it's a thing, right? And just keeps moving on. But that's my challenge and she doesn't want anybody to feel sorry for her. She doesn't want to ask anybody for help. I mean, she's just and it's just, she's amazing. But that's my challenge is, you know, and again, she's so funny. She wrote a thank you. And if I read it, everybody be crying their eyes out. She read a thank you to everybody like a year after it happened. And it just, I read it this morning just when I was putting stuff together. And it made me cry again, but she's my hero. She has the literal physical challenge, but it is a very emotional challenge for me. Well, I overcome it by just trying to be the best version of myself to everybody I'm with. Right. The challenge is when somebody's complaining to me about a problem and it's a teeny problem, Curtis, I'm like, dude, you need bigger problems because that is a blip on the radar screen, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, and with my faith, I even look at death. I mean, death, everybody's afraid of death. I mean, I think there's worse things than death. I really do, right? But being in the death space, I just, you know, to me, it's like, focus on what you can do while you're living. Because once you're dead, man, you know, they're going to celebrate your life unless you're a really bad person, right? But they're still going to find something nice to say about you. So to me, it's like, I use death as a reminder to live life. I do. People think that's morbid. You're in the death business? That's morbid. I go, you don't get it. It is the best thing I could do because it reminds me every day to be the best version of myself, right? And so I just, you know, I don't know. My wife says I wear rose-colored glasses and I'm unrealistic. I think I'm optimistic, right? The way I look at it.
There's an app that I stumbled across a few years ago that was really about that idea of like, you know, death's a reminder to live fully. I can't remember what it was, but I say there's some. Did you know? Yes. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I had it on my phone, and if you don't use it for a while, it would come up like 3 times a day and give you quotes about death, and not morbid. It was like live life, you know. Don't be thinking about death. Yes. Oh my gosh. Let me see if I still have the app, but it doesn't come up anymore because I think if you don't click on it over a period of time, it just kind of goes away. But yeah, no, it was really cool. It was really cool. And I forget the name of it myself, but I remember it. I had it on my phone.
Yeah, it was cool. And it's a great outlook.
Yes. Well, thanks. And again, I tell people nobody argues either. I tell them I'm too dumb to be sad or negative, and nobody argues with me. So I don't know what that means. Just going through the questions, I mean,
how is the death care landscape? Like, how's that changed from your perspective? It sounds like, I mean, you're going to definitely know the changes that have taken place in pre-need, but what are the things you've seen?
Overall, I mean, there was 22,500 funeral homes when I started. There's like less than 19,000 now. So consolidation is real. The cremation rate was about 14% when I started. It's over 61% now. It was a male-dominated space. Now 75% of the mortuary school graduates are female, right?
75%?
75%. And I think last year or the year before, graduating class were female.
Wow.
The funeral ceremony uh, funeral professionals have transitioned from order takers to, event planners. I mean, you really do. You really have to find out how to celebrate a life. And then, it's gone from a multi-generational to a first generational business because 82% of the approximately 1,500 graduates of mortuary school are first generation. So
Wow.
it's crazy. It's really, really changed. And being on the board, Paul's on the board with me too. And Paul's amazing. And he definitely makes the space a better place. And he's the one that helps with a lot of this data, and it's just awesome. But then pre-need, interesting, pre-need really hasn't changed, to be quite honest. The average age is exactly the same, or pretty close to the same as it was when I started in the late 80s, right? The mix of business between single pay and multi-pay is essentially the same because, as marketers, in essence, you want to drive down the average age. You want to increase the multi-pay mix because that means you're probably accessing younger ages. But that really, really hasn't changed. And after being with 4 pre-need companies, Curtis, we're all playing the same game. I mean, we really are playing the same game. But I love it. None of us are getting out of here alive. We all need what we offer, right? And from a kid who couldn't sell candy bars in Little League, I mean, I could talk to anybody, anywhere, anytime about pre-need because none of it. I mean, everybody needs it. Everybody needs it. Whether you're doing a $30,000 funeral or you're doing a shake and bake, right? It's everybody needs what we have to offer, and that's why I love what we do and love the space we're in. So,
Yeah.
um, well, I've the lessons I've learned along the way.
Yeah,
That
let me ask
another.
you this. Let me back up
Sure,
real fast. So you said
sure,
80%. I'm still like spinning my head on these numbers you shared. It's like
yes,
75% women, 82% first gen. So, I mean, and you're involved in the college. Do you feel like these first gen funeral directors, are they entering this with the mindset of employment or ownership? Like, are they thinking like, we want to get through this and I'm going to own a funeral home one day? Or do you think they're just happy with the employment? Does that make sense?
yes, it does. That's another great question. I do not know the answer because again, me being the geeky guy. I mean, I'm the guy that can be in a room full of sales guys and love it, and I can be in a room full of actuaries and love it. I really do. I mean, I really like the cerebral side, but I love the emotional side too. But I don't know that. That's a great research question, and I don't know that. That I'm going to write that down and see if I can do a little research and find out. That 82%, is it? Do they desire ownership or just do they want to help people on the worst day of their life? Right? Do they do
Yeah.
that? So
So I just wonder, like, if that's any sort of indication for us to think of, like, what does consolidation and everything look like in the future? Are we going to see, like funeral director entrepreneurs, or are we going to see funeral director more operators that want to come in and have that steady, steady paycheck and corporate ownership? Or I don't know. It's just interesting to me to hear that many that are coming out of it are first gen. I mean,
yep.
they're new to this. It's crazy.
Yep. Yeah, it is. It is crazy, and that's a good question. My gut, if you have a gun to my head, so give me an answer, one or the other. I'd say they just are interested or enticed or infatuated or fascinated. I don't know what the correct word is with the job,
Yeah.
right? And not necessarily, although they see funeral directors with dark suits and Cadillacs, right? And maybe they think, oh wow. But I've never heard that. I've never heard the conversation of like, I want to get into this business because I want to own a funeral home someday. I'm not saying I have the right answer, but I just think that's a great question. I'll do a little research on that one.
And it seems like a
Um,
lot of them always, when you ask the question, what got you into this? If they weren't, my family has owned this for 5 generations, it seems like the answer I hear a lot, just, trying to come up with an anecdotal answer here, is that, they'll say, I went to a funeral and I loved the way a funeral director served our family. And they're just drawn to it, like the compassionate side of it, right? They like the idea of I mean, if you think about it, it's like very fulfilling, right?
Yes.
For a job, you're caring for people and helping so much, but
Oh,
also
it's more of a
taking on so much weight, so much grief, so much stress. I mean, it's also, you know, a job that it was tough to strike a balance, I think. But
Oh, it's a calling.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
absolutely a calling. It is absolutely a calling. I believe that in my heart. And what's on the flip side of that though, Curtis, you got my brain running now. On the flip side of that, why aren't the second, third, fourth, fifth generation following up?
Why aren't they
Right?
coming back? Yeah,
Why is it 82% first generation? And my knee jerk answer is because it's really, really hard. It's a really, really, really demanding job. And they've seen what it's done to their parents and grandparents and great grandparents. Um, it's a challenge to maintain the call volume, and the profit margin is greater now than it ever has been. You have more discerning customers. You just got, there's so many headwinds. I think there's so many headwinds that next generation maybe say, man, I'm going to go be an accountant, right? I'm going to go do something else. So to me, and there's probably research out there and probably people, the two people that watch me on this, no, I'm just kidding. I hope it's for two, but I think they're, they may have some ideas. And if they do, please call me, write me, email me, whatever. Cause I mean, this is stuff that fascinates me. And maybe you and I put these things on a to-do list and try to, and research these, because I would find that fascinating, especially being on the board.
yeah.
Because so anyway, but that very cool, very cool, awesome.
Yeah, I think
All
it'd be
right.
telling to what we should expect in the future. You know, it'd be a little bit of a peek into that. But so yeah,
Yep.
so what are some of the you think the most important lessons you've learned along the way?
Oh my gosh, I think one of my favorite ones. I just had a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine on it. Everybody wants to differentiate themselves, right? Whether it's you and Tukio's, whether it's me being in pre-need, and it's we all want to differentiate ourselves so that it's easy to explain to people why they should do business with us, right? But it's hard. It's hard to do that, and the more successful you are differentiating, it's that question, and I won't roll my eyes on this call, but being around 37 years, when you ask a funeral director, why do people come to my funeral home, they say, because I give the best service, and you're like, oh, okay, what does that mean, right? Because you want to go down, right, and be being a pre-need guy. Why should I do business with X, right? My current employer is NGL, right? Hopefully till I retire, but someone else has to say in that, not me, right? So it's like, why should people use NGL, right? And can I articulate that, right? And so I think truly differentiating yourself is a big, 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 big challenge. But once you understand it, what you truly differentiate yourself, and it is real and authentic, you better tell as many people as you can, as often as you can. I mean, that's one thing I've learned. It is absolutely still a relationship-based business. Absolutely a relationship-based business. So you try to impact as many people as you can. Everything is a process, Curtis. And if you don't understand that, without process, there can be no improvement. So you need to figure out your process and understand the stages of your process and where you can improve in that process. I don't care if it's you. I don't care if it's me. I don't care if it's a pre-need agent. I don't care if it's an at-need funeral director and their process when the phone rings and they get a death call, right? You need to understand what you're good at in that process and what you're not, and improve it. As I said earlier, life is supposed to be hard. I'm convinced of that. It's absolutely, do not pray for an easy life. Pray for the wisdom, courage, and strength to handle a hard one, right? And we all can do hard things. Don't second guess yourself, or don't give yourself, not enough credit. And then lastly, which is really hard for me because I'm a type A spaz, listening is more powerful than talking. It is. It is. I mean, it is. And I truly believe that. And I've got people in this space, you being one of them, you're a fabulous listener, a
Well,
fabulous
thank you.
listener. You are. And I admire those people because I'm not a good listener because my brain goes to something and I want to just, I don't want to be one of those people that wants to talk just to hear themselves, but I want to solve, I want to fix, right? I want
Yeah.
to help, right? And so go slow to go fast. Listen twice as much as you talk, two ears, one mouth. That at 61 is my biggest development opportunity, you know, and I'm really focused on it. But it is a very powerful lesson I've learned.
And I think, thanks for the compliment on my listening. I mean, I feel like I'm really not that great of a listener, but like I've found that, like, just when I've tried to work on that skill, because I have, um, it's just like you just need to be genuinely curious. I'm not saying you're not genuinely curious, but that's the way that I like work on it myself. Right? Is I'm always like, because a lot of times the questions are in there, but did I ask it? And just like trying to dig into comments people make, because a lot of times you make a comment and there's a lot beneath what was said, right? And if we're not willing to kind of ask the question and chip into it, we might not really understand what somebody was meaning by it. But
Oh yeah, no, yeah, no. My son just told me I need to be a better listener on our camping trip. Remember I told you about that? Maybe we get a little bit, our 11-day tent camping trip out to your neck of the woods and back, which was, oh my gosh, I loved it. I could do a stand-up routine. It was so much fun, but it was just
tell us
wonderful.
about that though. Like, where did you come out here?
Well, I don't know what, I just wanted to spend time with my two boys, my 27 and my 25-year-old. I love them immensely. They're wonderful. They're completely different. And I hope if they ever listen to this, they don't get mad. But Noah, my oldest, is very stoic. I would liken him to Spock. I mean, he's a great listener, fabulous listener. And he's very caring and loving. And he's quicker to listen than to talk. He's a National Merit Scholar, full ride to college, brainiac, right?
Mm.
And just really, really bright. But I always give him grief because he's not willing to make the mistakes I think we all need to be willing to make, right? And my wife will tell you I make 100 of them daily, right? You make a ton of mistakes, but you never know how far you can go until you try to go that far, and so you have to make mistakes to grow, right? So that's my oldest. Then Matt's a consultant with EY, working out of Chicago,
Cool.
hard charger. But we spent the time together, both loving and very respectful of each other's personalities, strengths and differences and all that good stuff. But yeah, so we tent camped the whole way out. We hiked Angel's Landing. We won the lottery and hiked Angel's Landing. My middle son's fearless, and my nephew was with us. And the two of them just couldn't wait to run up the thing, right? Noah and I are looking at each other like, do we really want to do this? Because when you get to the point where they check your phone to see that you really won the lottery to kite this thing, and you see the chains along the cliff. Have you ever done it?
Yeah. Yeah, I have. Yeah, it's awesome.
Okay. Yeah, it is awesome. It's one of the best hikes in the world,
Yeah.
but it is scary, right? And I hate
Yeah.
heights. And so, no, I told him, I go, dude, if you don't want to do it, I'll stay here with you. But I want to do it. But if you don't want to do it, let's stay here. But it's totally up to you. I don't want to pressure you. Well, it took him about 15 seconds. Dad, let's do it. And we both were
Yeah.
apprehensive, but we got into it and just went. And the whole way up, man, my heart, it was just awesome. But you get to the top and it was just glorious. It was awesome.
How did you
So
handle that like 6 foot stretch where it's just drop off both sides? How did you?
I didn't look down.
Didn't look,
I
just
looked
go.
up.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
looked up. I was the last one. My son was first, and my nephew, then Noah, then me. And I just looked at him and followed him up, right? And
Yeah.
the whole time, you're just like, don't look down, stay focused. Because I'm one of those people, when I look down, my legs literally will get weak, right? And so I didn't look down. So we made it to the top. There's grandmas up there. There's people from all over the world up there, and I'm looking at myself, wow, what a wimp, man. These people were fearless to come up here, and I'm trying to be a big tough guy, right? So anyway, but that was what, we just had great hikes. We just had, 6 to 8 hours in the car every day because it's a 24-hour ride from Cincinnati out to that neck of the woods. We
Yeah.
were in Bryce the night before, and
Oh wow.
it
Yeah.
was 38 degrees, 40 degrees in the tent. And then we got down to Zion and it was like 70 degrees in the tent at night, right? And so it was
Yeah.
just a 2 hour stretch or whatever, 2.5 hour stretch. But you live in such gorgeous country. Utah is absolutely beautiful, just amazing. My nephew lives out there. He works with Northrop Grumman. He lives in Clearfield, just north of Salt Lake. So yeah,
Clearfield. We're in Tukio's is in Ogden, which is and Clearfield's the next town. I mean, we are literally. If I drove to Clearfield right now, it'd take me 8 minutes to get there. I mean, it's
oh,
really close.
it is awesome.
So I know where. Yeah, Northrop Grumman's right off the exit there in Clearfield.
We went to church in Ogden that Sunday morning where they're getting married, and so it was funny. a little tidbit. On that 11-day trip, I went through every city that was the home office of the 4 pre-need companies I worked for.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting. I went to Ogden, right? And then I come through, and then I come through Des Moines. 2 of the companies, we stayed overnight in Des Moines, and I was texting my buddies and homesteaders, and then we come through Batesville, where Fort Dot
Wow.
was, on my way home. So it's kind of ironic. I told my sons, they didn't really care, but I thought it was kind of cool. So it was funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if it was just amazing. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. People are like, you slept on the ground. Like, well, an air mattress. The first night I tried to be tough and sleep on the ground. I said, the heck with that,
Yeah.
Oh, we created a makeshift cooler. My sons are so smart. We created our own air conditioning unit. We took this cooler, we bought this cooler and put ice in it, bought these fans and we're blowing cold air in the tent. It was just really, we just had a great time. Great time.
So cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what would you like to, sorry, I'm going to switch gears again, but that's, amazing trip. Thanks for sharing it with us. What would you like to see happen in the future of death care?
Oh, this is where I had your guts and Thogmartin's guts, or anybody else that's an entrepreneur, all these funeral home owners' guts, especially first generation. I being on the board, and this is unverified, but I vetted it with a couple of the mortuary school presidents and vetted it with some of the icons in the space, but I think I've walked into thousands of funeral homes, and within 5 minutes, I can tell what kind of culture that funeral home is. I can tell if everybody hates working there. I can tell if everybody loves working there. I can tell the funeral home owner is a great leader, or I can tell that the funeral home owner is a do this or or hit the door kind of deal. I can tell all that, seriously, walking into a funeral home. And it's unverified, but it's reputed that 50% of those 1,500 new graduates every year leave funeral service within 5 years. So 750 of the 1,500 leave within 5 years and go somewhere else because they have a non-compete, right? They live in this town. There's 2 or 3 funeral homes in this town. They can't go work for the competition because they signed a non-compete, so they get out of the space. So I don't know if we have a funeral home shortage issue. I think we have a funeral home attrition issue. And I would love, and again, this is where I wish I had the guts. I am passionate about going in and genuinely, curiously doing an assessment at each funeral home and saying, I want to do an assessment with each one of your employees, part-time, full-time, all of them, get an assessment of where you are in the culture of your funeral home. Because I think culture trumps strategy. And you do another thing you do amazingly, and I'm not blowing smoke. I think at Tukio's, I would work for Tukio's in a stinking heartbeat because of the culture you've created. And the feel when I was there, when I've been there, I mean, you can just feel it. I mean, it's palpable. It really is. And so I would love to do an assessment, find out where the gaps are, and try to encourage the funeral owner to have the courage and the curiosity and the genuineness to want to be better, to want to be a better leader, to create a culture where people feel like they're part of the solution, not part of the problem. Because I think these new graduates come out, they get worked to death and get paid $40,000 a year, and they get worked to death, and they feel like they're treated as, it's not the hours. I think it's the culture. It's like, do I feel like part of a problem or part of a solution? And at 61, I want to feel like, I mean, that's one of the reasons, I came with NGL. I'm feeling like I'm part of the solution and not part of the problem. And the day I'm part of the problem, I got to ask somebody, what do I need to be doing differently? Or where do I need to go to feel like I'm part of the solution and not part of the problem? So I hope like heck that happens. And again, if I had the guts, to hang a shingle and do it, because everybody I vetted it with thought it was a fabulous idea and absolutely necessary. But they asked me, how are you going to get paid? No one's going to pay you to do this,
Well,
and I'm so
my question, because I agree on how important that is. And, you made the comment earlier that, funeral directors, owners often are working in the business too much that they can't work on the business. So it's like, how do you convince them or motivate them to take the time to work on their business and even take a look at their culture and try to, you know what I mean? It's like, what would it take you know, because I mean, they're obviously so busy. It's like, what would it take to say you really do need to take the time to work on your business and not in it? You know, I mean, someone told me that 10 years ago and it took me a while to figure out when. And then I took the opportunity, went to a conference, right? Like,
Yep.
that's the one thing is like funeral, you know, there's people, you know, they go to a lot of conferences and that maybe is the opportunity. So maybe that's the thought is like, maybe there should be more continuing ed surrounding culture and retention, you know, and hopefully the non-compete, that federal change that just took place would help with that. But, you know, it's just trying to motivate a business owner that's just so used to having their head down, just grinding to say, man, just take the time and like assess your culture and your business and your people. Um, yeah, because it's not something that just happens, you know. I mean, we do these like monthly surveys, employees, like how are you feeling, what do you like, what do you, and, you know, any like quarterly performance reviews. What do you like about your job? What do you hate about your job? What's the best thing about it? Worst thing about it? What can we do to make it better? Like that. That is, I think, super crucial. And hearing that you're losing 50%, like I think you're onto something there. That is a problem that needs to be fixed. But
I got a great idea. Uh, you need to create an arm, a leadership arm. Hire me to run it because if it sounds like you have the process in place. I'm telling. So how? I had a conversation with a very very smart person whose husband's a funeral director, runs a 150 call funeral home, and he's working X number of hours a day. She goes, unless you can put more hours in a day, he'd love to do what you'd say, but he'd tell you to get out of his way because he's got a family to serve, right? So
yeah,
it's how do you almost have to force them. You almost have to kidnap them. You almost
yeah,
have to like tie them up and find one of their buddies that they went to mortuary school that's willing to run the business for them. It's like, hey, Curtis, I got your buddy Ryan. He's going to run the business while you're gone. I know you don't want to go, but tough noogies. It's almost like going to intervention. It's
yeah.
almost literally like going to intervention. And I
Seriously,
think
yeah,
maybe that's what we do. Maybe we take like the best leadership consulting process and then take this intervention process and we find a way to bring them because it's not that they don't want to. I don't think a lot of them would love to do it. They just don't have the physical energy or the emotional energy to do it after they've served the families they've served. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, I don't think it's a desire. I just think it's an ability issue, right? And so you've just maybe hit on another one, man. I'm serious. There's something about that intervention process. Maybe we might have to do, you know,
yeah.
lock them up. We won't call it Betty Ford. What will we call it? We'll call it the Todd Van Beck. We'll call it the Todd Van Beck Center.
There you
We'll
go.
create an intervention. So
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. But that is where my passion is. I love it. And I would, again, who knows? Someday I might fall and hit my head, or someone might, give me the courage or light a fire or whatever. I just, that's where I'm very passionate about is helping do that. And again, I kid, but the intervention process, because you almost have to force them to do it. And then again, I'm thinking, okay, how do I show them in revenue, right? It's not just in people, right? It's like, oh, your staff will love you and they'll feel great. He goes, I don't care. I'll still be serving 150 families and I'll still be making my margins, right? You got to show me how I'm going to improve my margins, or why would I want to do that? I mean, I'm not Gandhi, right? I don't. So you have to genuinely get them to care and say, yeah, your great granddaddy did an amazing job. Your granddaddy did an amazing job. Your daddy did an amazing job. But we got to do something different, man. Because yeah, you're doing the same amount of calls, but your margin's 60% of what it was, 50% of what it was. I just looked at that. I did some research. I mean, the margins in funeral service back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s was incredible compared to it is today. Way, way different, right? And to
Yeah.
dig down into that, there's a bunch of different reasons, but solving that problem would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
No, I think you're right. You got me thinking about it too. Just, yeah. I mean, like you said, it goes back to that point. We compete on service, but I think when you take care of your employees, they will better take care of your customers, which improves the service. And when the service is great, I mean, people will pay crazy amounts for good service. We really
They
care
won't
about the
even think
service.
about it. I,
Yeah,
I, I,
exactly.
I, I've got a case in point. I have this new electrician. We did some work on our house during COVID, and I met this guy through the contractor, and and he's since kind of gone out on his own. But I trust him implicitly. He is just a genuinely wonderful human being. I don't even ask him. I don't ask how much it's going to cost. I don't ask. I just say, I said, Dan, here's what I need done. Whatever you think is the best way to do it, just do it, and tell me how much I owe you. I totally
Yeah,
agree with that, right? And that is absolutely 100% true. That there's funerals I can walk into that their averages are 50% higher, 25% higher, 50% higher than the national average, and their family satisfaction is almost 100%. I mean, but it's because it's that culture they've created. Families feel like they're the only family they're serving, and they're serving five at that time, right? It's just, yeah,
yeah.
it's special. It's
Have
special,
you?
and there's
Oh, sorry. Keep.
no, that's
I
like
had to cut you off.
no,
Have
go
you
ahead.
ever read the book The Experience Economy?
Yes, by
That
yep,
is that I think is a book that every funeral director should read. I know Jerry Givnish and Jim Cummings at Life Celebration. They really, I mean, they're in the book, right? I think the latest
yep.
there's like a piece of a chapter dedicated to them, and I think they might have been some of the first that discovered that and brought it to funeral homes. But that's really what you're selling, like the whole idea of like commodities, goods, services, and then experiences being that highest level of service where people aren't just satisfied, but they're surprised by the level of your service, right? I think that's the difference maker is when you hear these stories. I don't know if you've ever sat in I had the opportunity to sit in a management meeting at a funeral home and one morning, and part of that agenda was, what did you do to like surprise the families this week? And people started sharing experiences.
Ooh,
It was
what a
like,
great
well,
question.
we found out grandma loved M&Ms and her favorite color was green and her name was Dorothy. So we got bowls of green M&Ms and we put the letter D on them, and those were all over. That was just a small thing, cost a couple $100, and we spread them all over the visitation, and the family could not get over that, right? And it's like you won that family over forever now, and they like your friend, they don't care what it costs at that point.
Nope, 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 nope. And there's funeral homes. There's a handful of funeral homes that I've been in that you walk in and you feel like you need to stand up a little straighter. I mean, even as a customer, because it's just that environment. It's like going into a 5-star hotel. It's like it's just really an interesting experience. And and then you go into funeral homes where you just want to help. You just want to say,
Mm-hmm.
dude, I know you've done 100 calls for 100 years, but man, everybody's got these frowns on their face, man. I want to, I want to create a different environment. Let me help, right?
Yeah.
And so it could be, you could get up, get up and come to work every day and just everybody could be so much happier. They're going to work 60 hours. You're not having them work any less. You're not lowering your expectations of them at all. You're just creating a different culture, a different environment, and it's doable. It is genuinely doable. It's not putting foosball tables in and letting them take a 2-hour lunch break, man. It's a genuine. It's effort. It takes a lot of effort. You know that as an owner, as a leader, you know that how much effort it takes to create that. But once you create it, it's a lot of momentum. It's a lot of momentum.
Yeah.
So, but very cool.
Well, I love that, man. That's an honorable vision for the death care space in the future, is just to really raise the level of service and culture and everything else, and just that makes the space a better place, like you said, right?
Yeah, I just need. Do you have some courage serum? Like let's inject me in my arm, and I feel a little. But I don't know. Just everybody says, "Oh my God, you've got the energy, you've got the experience, you got it. Just do it." And I don't know. I don't know what it is. Yeah, that's why Thogmartin just shakes his head. He took a video of me once. It's like, when are you going to get off the dime? And he sends it to me periodically, and I just crack up, right? Because it's fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, any final words for the listeners of this podcast, or
Thank you. I just want a very sincere gratitude. The people out there in the funeral space have helped me raise my family, and I am eternally grateful. God willing, I got another 8, 10 years left, and just to contribute. But I have this sincere desire to contribute, but I have such gratitude. Every funeral director I meet, I thank them. It's like, man, they're looking at me like, I don't know you. I've never met you. Why are you acting so happy to meet me? It's because I just am appreciative. But I also know we have to step up our game. We have to step up our game to create those experiences where people don't look at it as a commodity, right? Don't look at it as the cheapest and easiest way to get out, right? And again, I've got stand-up routines, and I got routines that can make people cry on my experiences in the funeral space. And for another time, one of them will be my dad's service. He threatened to haunt me, and I changed his service, and he hadn't haunted me yet. So anyway, it's a funny story, but some other time, I guess, because I think I've extended my allotment.
No, you haven't. We'll have to have you. No, we'll have you back. But I just want to say, the people that know you, Ken, they love you, and so part of the reason I was excited to have you on the podcast is for the folks that don't know you. I mean, the ones that know you, I mean, I learned some new things about you today, which is awesome. And those that don't know you, I think it's good for them to get to know you and your story. And it reminds me of just when we met. I don't know if you remember, but I do, because you had an impact. We were in the Wilmington airport. We were down there visiting Tim, and I remember like we were all waiting to board flights, and like there's only like 2 or 3 gates in that airport, and we'd been there for a few days, but you and I hadn't really had a chance to talk. But that was really like the first time we had a conversation. I remember just really just that. It's the energy, like you said, it's that positive energy and everything you had about you and everything you made an impact really quick, where I remember that when we met, which isn't, I can't say that of very many people.
Well, I appreciate that. That day we spent golfing together is my impact day. I loved getting to know you, and the comment you made at the Tom Johnson Memorial to me motivates me every day. I just want to let you know that. So, and I'm not going to repeat what you said, but it was very awesome, very positive. And again, it's never left my head. And so I appreciate that. So what you said, very cool.
Thank you. And thanks again for taking time on here, Ken. This is awesome.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Now I'm trying to picture this sitting at the Wilmington airport. Usually I can do that, but maybe I'm getting old. It's falling out. So anyway.
Luckily, no one crashed into it that day. There was another time, I can't remember who was down there. Someone from Tukio was down there, and the car came flying through the front of the building.
So, oh my goodness!
Yeah,
that's not good. That's
different day.
Yeah, different day. But thank you for everything you do in the space too, because you absolutely make this space a better place. So I appreciate it. Maybe I'll get T-shirts made up, right?
Make the space a better place.
Yeah, make the space a better place, man. And then just put death care on the back, right? Or something. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, agreed.
Well, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Ken.